This next video tutorial will cover the creation of your banner images using Photoshop. So the first thing that you'll need to do is create your folder structure on your flash drive. So in Blackboard I list this being under week 8, and then under week 8 creating a folder called last.first_animal. So in my case that's sosa.steve_animal, and inside of that folder you'll create a folder called PSDs and then a folder called www, which actually will contain your final website. Also inside of the folder called www you'll create a folder called images as well, where the final images will reside. Note that I've also created a folder called PSDs here, which contains the images that we'll be creating tonight in this tutorial. So within Blackboard I have an example PSD file, and I'll go ahead and open that now. So this is an example file that you can basically take a look at, and on the layers palette over here on the right hand side you can see that I have the Gorilla folder currently visible, and if I expand that folder you can see layer by layer by layer how I created that image. Okay, if I collapse that, the next one is a tiger, and again you can see if I just hide and reveal different content, you can see how I created some of that content. And then lastly, the rabbits. So again, you can expand that to see what it took to create that text. So going back to each one individually here, when you design these, the color, font, and size should be extremely specific to the audience or the animal you're designing for. So in this case I was designing for a gorilla, so all of my text is fairly strong, and the text that stands out the most is obviously the gorilla's title. All the subtitles are sort of subtle, so they are shades of gray, like the gray found in his skin there. Next is a tiger folder. So in the tiger I have some elements in here that catch your eye, I guess. The way that I've cropped the image, first of all, it definitely makes you look at the eyeballs of the tiger, and then directly underneath that the U and the T of Unleash the Beast are the biggest elements. So those four elements, the two eyes and the U and the T, are where the audience is going to look first when looking at this image. So you control this completely. You control how creative you are in the cropping of your image. I would highly suggest that when you do crop your images, you don't reveal the entire image. So instead, crop it so that it creates some sort of intriguing image that you're not exactly sure what you're looking at. So then that kind of draws the eye to it a little bit more. So down in the text here, you also notice that the Seattle Zoo proudly presents. That text is pure white, and the text Unleash the Beast is actually a gradient from yellow to white. So I'm assuming that folks are going to be looking at the eyes first, and then panning down or tilting down, and then reading the Seattle Zoo proudly presents, and then Unleash the Beast, and then lastly a wildcat exhibit breaking free June through August 2009. So because of the way that I've designed the colors of that title, or the titles and the subtitles, I'm sort of attempting to control the way the audience reads my banner. So I would expect that you do the same thing, that you crop your image very uniquely so that it creates some sort of intriguing image, and that you choose font, color, and size very carefully. And then lastly, the rabbits one. I had to throw one in here that was kind of silly. So I've got Pwitty Whittle Wabbits, a Pwitty Whittle place to hippity hop on wine. So this obviously is sort of tongue-in-cheek a little bit. Everything's a little bit goofier, I would say. So it doesn't have to be a 100% serious piece. You can create something that's completely silly. So if that's the case, then make sure that your font is a silly font and that the colors you choose are silly colors. I've even implemented hearts into this design as well. So if it works for the audience or if it works for the animal, then great. I just want to make sure that everything that you design here is 100% intentional. Okay, next, if I hide Photoshop for a second here, I want to show you some of the final images that we are sort of basing our final sites off of. So I've just downloaded some of these images from Template Monster, and that's a website that gives you web templates. You can see here that it's got a simple banner. This just says Cat Club to love and understand cats. So a very simple image, a single animal, and some simple text. And note here that even in this simple design, the words love and understand are bolded to draw emphasis to those letters or those words. So you control this completely. Again, you should choose font, color, and size very carefully. Here's another one. Again, very simple banner area. In this case, just cat's care, some fake text there, and then the animal. So this one again, Wild Animals Fun. They have a logo there as well, and then a subtitle which matches the same gray as the logo. So in this case, you're looking at the animal, and then you're looking over the left-hand side where it says Wild Animals. So all of these are relatively simple designs. So in this case, even the Chihuahua font is unique, or it fits sort of the silliness of the Chihuahua and the necklace that's going on there. Okay, a pet sitting service. Again, simple banner image, and font, color, and size is all very specific. And then last design here. So what we're going to do is try to match some of these designs. So you are going to crop an image creatively and create your own text that complements that image. So you will choose font, color, and size very carefully. And then lastly, once you put that banner into an actual web page, or a simple web page, since this is one of the very first websites that we'll be creating, you'll basically pop that image into a simple shell and then put some simple text around it. So the expectations aren't too high when it comes to the HTML side, but your graphics and your color scheme should be awesome. Alright, with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing you're going to do is go back to Photoshop, and I'll go ahead and close this. So in Photoshop, you'll go File, New, and you're going to come to this pop-up screen here. So the first thing that you're going to have to do is set the dimensions of this. We're designing for an 800 by 600 screen, so the first one we're going to do is 750 for the width, and height is really up to you. So if our viewable area is 750 by 420, it just can't be bigger than 420, and obviously you don't want to take up the entire 420 for the height, so I'd say maybe 200 here. Resolution is going to be 72 dots per inch. Color mode is going to be RGB. Alright, so as soon as you set those parameters, go ahead and hit OK. And then immediately I would save this. So I hit Save As. And as far as the type goes, it should be a Photoshop document. And I think on my desktop I've placed my file or folder called last.first_animal. So if I double click inside of there, I have a folder waiting for me called PSDs. So if I double click inside of there, now I've already created these files already, but in your case you're creating it right now, and you would call that 800 by 600.psd. And that's not the actual dimension that you just designed it as, but this is the target screen resolution that you're designing it for. So 800 by 600.psd, make sure the format is Photoshop, and hit Save. Okay, next, one more time, you're going to go File, New, and this time we're going to be designing for a screen that's 1024 by 768. So in this case, we've got a little bit more room to play with, so we'll say 1000 pixels wide and maybe 250 pixels high. And again, resolution is still 72 and color mode is RGB. I'll go ahead and hit OK there. Alright, so I've got the perfect template now, and again, I'll immediately save as. So in this case, we're going to save it as 1024 by 768.psd. And make sure that's a Photoshop document that you're saving, and then save it to the PSD folders of your animal website. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up the files that I already had created there, which are essentially the exact same thing. So if I open those up in Photoshop, and next I need to open up my image. So you're going to have to open up your high resolution image, and the image was called Gorilla. So I'll go ahead and open that up. Okay, so I've got my nice big source file here, and again, this is a high resolution image. So this image should be at least the same size, or hopefully big enough to fill up my smaller PSDs. So using the default Move tool, which is the very first tool from the tool palette there, I'm just going to drag and drop this image into both of those PSDs. So as soon as I do that, I can close the original and start moving this around within this PSD. So I have a problem here on the left side and the right side. I don't have a lot of extra space, which means if I were to use this image as is, I'd have to place it in the middle of the design. I'm not sure that I really want to do that. So instead, I'm going to place the image off center just a little bit. And then I can just paint in the background. I can change from black or white background using the paint bucket tool and just paint that in black. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my move tool, and I'm going to try to crop this one creatively as well. So this one I have a little bit more room to play around with because I have a smaller dimension banner. So I can actually move this one around a little bit easier without having to worry. So I'm just going to mimic these designs, the design that I have down there at the bottom. I'm losing about 50 pixels since I only designed this one to be about 200 pixels high. So it's not going to be exactly the same proportionally, but that's okay. And in this case, I have a little bit of white hanging off here as well, which is really the background being revealed. So I'll go to the background layer on this one as well, use the paint bucket tool, and paint that in. Okay, so I've got the first step out of the way now. Immediately I would save, so File, Save, and again to the other one, File, Save. So now I've got two template files that are set up for the perfect size and have the perfect image contained in there creatively as well. So I've cropped that. The next thing that I need to do is add text. So using the text tool, which I can find over here by the little T icon, I'm just going to click within one of these designs here. By the way, I haven't clicked yet, and I'll note that at the very top here I have font, color, size. I'm going to change that font to just white for now, and then I'll click within design, and I'm just going to type in Gorillas. Okay, I'll go ahead and accept that change, and I have a problem here because my Gorillas text is actually not showing up above my image. So if I look at the layers over on the right hand side, that layer needs to be dragged up above layer number 1, which is the animal. So now I have a text layer called Gorillas, and if I switch back to the move tool, I can place that somewhere in my design. Okay, I have a few options here. If I double click the T, it will select all of the text, and with the text selected I also have another option here. If I roll over this will toggle off on the character panel. So if I click on that, oops, maybe it was already open. It was already open. So on the right hand side here above my layers, I can actually click on the T, and this will deselect all of the text, and then from here I can just put my cursor inside of the font, which is cherry right now, and just go up and down using the up and down keys on my keyboard to try to find a font that I think is ideal for this design. So this is probably what I'd recommend you spend the longest time doing because the fonts are going to be very important in the way that this feels. So in my case, I'm looking just for something that feels strong. And depending on how many fonts you have on your computer, this may take all day long. Alright, so that one will do the trick for now. And the color white isn't exactly the color that I want, but I need to go back to my color swatch to actually get the final color. So that color swatch, which you saved from Adobe Kuler, go ahead and open that up in Photoshop as well. Okay, so now I've got that color swatch, and if I click on that T one more time, I can change the color to any of these colors that I happen to be rolling over. Okay, so any of these colors would work. The real question for me is, where do I want the eye to go on this design? So if it's white, it's going to be the very first thing that they notice. If it's black, it's hidden. A gray, they won't notice it. They'll notice the nose or the nostrils first here. Maybe that red. Personally, I don't know if that red is the right color. So I might just try, I'll stick with white for now and just hit OK. So once you've chosen font, color, and size, and again size you can choose from this drop down as well. So instead of 72 points, I can change that to 100 if I wanted to. So whatever size fits for you is the right size. Say 75 might be the right size here. Alright, so one thing that I usually do then is just duplicate that layer by dragging that layer into the new layer icon. Okay, now I have an exact copy, and I can just move that underneath my original. And if I double click on that T, then I can change that text to whatever text or subtitle that I want. So it says gorillas, and then I might say, or instead of coming soon, I might say breaking free. That just sounds scary. That's a good tagline. Breaking free summer 2011. Now obviously all of this text doesn't fit, but that's not a problem. I can click off of the T and then just choose a new size that might work. And ideally, because I want this to look somewhat designed or like a logo, I want to choose a size that will somewhat match up with the width of the current title in there now. So I've got Breaking Free 2011. That'll work as a basic title. The only problem now is the color. So again, using the color picker here, I can choose any of these colors that I think might work. I don't want white because that would compete too much. So I'll go with a lighter shade of gray there. I'll even try the darker gray. I'll go with lighter gray. Okay, so now that I'm completely happy, I've chosen font, color, size. The last thing that I could potentially do is right click on any of these layers. So if I right click on the layer, I get blending options. So blending options is an interesting set of tools here. It's just really eye candy. You can choose a drop shadow, which in my case doesn't really show an effect because it's on black. An inner shadow, which you obviously see the effect there on the gorillas title. Okay, an outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss. A satin effect, color overlay, gradient overlay. So you know what, gradient overlay for me might work, doesn't look half bad. So once I check that box, I need to click on that title called gradient overlay, and then I have my options over here. So in this case, I'm currently going from black to white, and if I click on that slider scale, it shows my starting color, which is black, and my ending color, which is white. So in this case, I'm going to go to my starting color, and from the color picker down here, instead of full on black, I'm going to start with maybe a little bit lighter shade of gray. So I'm looking for a little bit more subtle effect. Okay, I'm happy there. I'm actually going to go back to bevel and emboss, except I don't like that the way that it bevels here. I'm going to bring that from 5 down to 1 and check that and uncheck it to see what the effect would look like. So it's a really small difference there, but I like that. And then lastly, do I want any stroke around this? So if I choose a stroke, it asks me to pick what stroke color. So some of these colors might work. If I try out this one and hit OK there, right now the stroke size is 3 pixels. I could increase that, and obviously you see the effect there, or I could decrease that, and the effect would be a little bit more subtle. And I'll go ahead and hit OK. So in a nutshell, if I right click on a text layer, I have blending options. So once you've chosen font, color, size, blending options might be the last thing that you want to choose. Okay, so don't forget at this point, obviously save your PSD file. And I can move this guy out of the way here. So what I'm going to do instead of recreating the wheel is just drag these current text layers into my bigger banner area. So I'm working in the 800 by 600 PSD. I've got the Breaking Free and Gorillas type text titles here. I'm clicking on the very first one and then holding the shift key and clicking on the second one. So now they are both selected, and I'm simply going to drag and drop them into this new PSD. Now I'll note again that I dropped them underneath the layer 1, so now I just need to move them, and now they are above layer 1. So a quick way of adjusting size or filling up the screen here a little bit, if that's what you want to do, is having them both selected, by the way, and then choosing Edit and free transform. So once you do that, they're both selected. You have a bounding box now around both of them. I would click on the chain link up at the very top here, so that you are constraining height and width while you modify it, and choose, instead of 100, I might choose 150. And then that automatically changes the height as well as the width, and I will accept that change. Okay, so now I have two banner images. I'll save this file. I've got two banner images that would work perfectly for this original color scheme. So these three files are what I would combine into the PDF. So I've done this once. You actually need to do this twice to create two images, or two sets of images based off two different color schemes. That's it. Hopefully this helped in your development with this project.